Welcome to Keeping the Beat, an engaging web series hosted live by TNMEA in partnership with the CMA Foundation. Tune in weeknights, Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time to learn from and interact with music professionals from around the globe, representing every facet of the vast world of music. Today is Tuesday, April 14th. And my name is Laurie Schell, and I am in Nashville, Tennessee, and I represent Arts Ed Tennessee and my own consulting agency, Laurie Schell Associates. I will try not to use too many acronyms tonight, so please ask questions. If there's any terms that you don't understand, I will make sure that we spell out all the acronyms. And tonight I will be talking to you about finding your voice, arts education advocacy. I encourage you to interact by replying to this live video stream with your questions and comments, which I will respond to throughout the hour with assistance from Julie Hill, who will act as the moderator. One disclaimer, while this is being streamed live, it will remain on the Keeping the Beat Facebook page for future reference. So as such, your comments will also remain part of the archive. Greetings, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about advocacy, and we'll learn what it is, how to engage in it, what you can do to make sure that your voice is heard in music education advocacy going forward. I understand that we have a lot of music educators on the call, as well as pre-service music teachers and some students as well. I also understand that some of you are quite experienced advocates, and I would welcome your contribution. If you think of any links or resources that we should add to this session, I hope you'll comment in the comment box. So let's get started. So what are our questions for today? We're going to look at understanding the landscape. What can I learn about the policies that impact music and arts education? And the big picture, what is advocacy? And what role do I play in the advocacy ecosystem? What tools are available to me to help me be an effective advocate? And finally, take action. How will I engage and become an effective advocate? So let's first look at understanding the landscape. I'm going to ask you in the next slide, I'm going to pose several questions, and you don't need to comment in the comment box, but I will ask you to take a few minutes to think about your answers. So let's get to know you a little bit. Please think about your answers, and we'll be able to respond later when we get to the question period. So how would you define advocacy? Can you think of a time that you have advocated for something on behalf of yourself or someone else? Were you successful? Why or why not? Take a few minutes to think about that. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in advocating for an issue that you care about? 10 being the most confident. So just take a temperature for yourself. Where are you on the scale of being an effective and confident advocate? So the definition that Americans for the Arts likes to use is advocacy is any action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause, supports or defends, or pleads on behalf of others. So it's pretty broad when you think about it. Um, at its core, you are advocating or asking for action on behalf of a cause that you care about. So, what are the barriers to advocacy? And I'll tell you some things that I hear a lot when I talk to people about advocacy. And the first is, I don't know where to start. So, hopefully, by the end of this session, you will have some ideas about that. I need help in understanding who to address my concerns to. And that's a very legitimate concern. Uh, we have lots of different people that we need to advocate to. It's not always our elected officials. Sometimes it's our principal. Sometimes it's our work colleagues. Sometimes it's a state official. So we'll talk about how you know where to go. I don't feel like I have agency to address issues with my superior. Oh, I hope at the end of this session you will understand that advocacy does not have to be adversarial. Advocacy very often falls in the area of educating someone else, of bringing things to their attention, of supporting your story. I don't know what to say. So again, we'll talk a little bit about messaging and effective messages. We could spend a whole session on effective advocacy messages and crafting them, but we'll just talk a little bit about it today. And the one I hear most often, I don't have time to advocate in addition to doing my job. And I hear you on that. It is above and beyond what you normally need to do in a day. But it also, I will say, it also doesn't have to take a lot of time. Many times we are responding to action alerts that come down from our professional associations, and sometimes it takes no more than a 5-minute email. So it doesn't have to take a lot of time. So let's talk briefly about the policies that support music and arts education. First of all, let's start at the federal level. Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, is the federal Elementary and Secondary Education Act that was passed several years ago. And what was groundbreaking about this act is that music and arts are included in the language of the bill, that the music and the arts are part of a well-rounded education. NAFME, or the National Association for Music Education, has a really terrific web page where you can learn more about ESSA and what the language is around music and the arts. So that's at the federal level. Then we have state education policies. And in our state, I'm speaking about Tennessee, every state does have their own state policies around education and arts education. In Tennessee, instruction in art and music shall be included in grades K through 8. That's what's in our education code. We also have an education code, a language that says that there is a fine arts credit required for graduation. If you go to this website, Arts Education Partnership, there is a wonderful interactive map there that will give you a scan of all of the different states. You can click on your state and learn what the dominant arts education policies are for every state. So Tennessee has, some fairly strong policies, but you'll see that high school music and arts education is not included. So I think that's interesting, and that's maybe something that we want to work on in the future. But we do have a fine arts credit required for graduation, which means that it has to be taught in the high school. Another uh, bill that I want to draw your attention to comes out of ESSA, and it is Title I, Part A funding. Student Support and Academic Enrichment Funding, Title IV, Part A, calls out specifically access to well-rounded education. So as part of that bill, part of that funding that comes down from the federal government, the music and the arts are considered part of a well-rounded education. So for the very first time that I know of, we have a good amount of federal dollars that are attached to well-rounded education and therefore music and arts education. In this current year, there is $1.17 billion that were allocated to Title IV Part A, which is a terrific boost for our communities, our districts, who know and understand how to access that funding. Again, if you go to the NAFME website, there is a wonderful toolkit that will tell you all the ins and outs of Title IV Part A and also give you guidance on how to apply for it. Then you may have local education policies at your district level that go either beyond what your state policies require or somehow different from your state education policies. So you can go to your district office to inquire to see whether any specific arts education policies at the local level. So we'll pause here for a moment before we go to the next section, and I will check in with Julie to see if there are any questions about the landscape, where we are. So Julie, I'm not seeing your questions come through. Do I need to wait another minute? Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, great. So the message is we're going to hold off for now and we'll keep going. So let's look at the big picture. Get out your big lens camera. And let's talk about how influence happens. Advocacy is, after all, the art of influencing decision makers. And this is a chart, a graphic from Americans for the Arts. And I think it's very effective in that it shows who the federal players are, who the state players are in making policy, who the local players are, and then, of course, the students have a big role here. What I like about this chart is that it's really top down and bottom up. So yes, while the federal education law says, puts the policies in place that are handed down to the state and handed down again to the local level and then implemented at the student level, the way that policy often happens is that it bubbles up from below. So sometimes the local advocates, students, teachers, community members will come together to have a coordinated ask for a specific policy change, and it can actually make its way up into state policy and federal policy. So it is very much an up and down, top down, and bottom up endeavor. Let's look at a different graphic now that talk about the spheres of influence. Who Who do we know? Who do we have to influence? And how does it revolve around the students? As you'll see, the students are at the center of this graphic because they, of course, are the important beneficiaries of everything that we do. Everything that we advocate for should be very student focused and student centered. So, most of you will find yourselves in the ring that's immediately outside the student ring, and those are teachers, community programs, parents, um, artists, businesses, higher education, pre-professional educators. So most of you, I would think, would be the closest student to the students. So you know both what works and what's needed and where the gaps are. So your voice is incredibly important in arts education, music education advocacy. So before we go on to the next question, Julie, let me check in with you again. Let's see what she has to say. So the next section, we'll talk about what an advocacy ask looks like, and there's a whole spectrum of advocacy information and activities and strategies. So starting at the top of the chart, most of us will find ourselves most often in the green area, which is education. It's our job to explain a fact sheet to a decision maker, to educate our principals, our superintendents, our administrators on the facts of what is happening in our classrooms, in our district, in our schools that might need some attention. So most of us will fall in that education arena. Uh, Following that is the research area. And as we'll talk about later in the session, research or data gathering will be an important facet of your messaging. It's very true that people listen with their hearts and they listen to a student's story and they feel the importance and the value of it. And if it's backed up with data that you can show that you've collected, so it has some impartiality along with the heartstring tugs, then that's going to make your most effective ask, is combining the education piece with the research or the data piece. So moving down on the spectrum, we have coalition and relationship building. Uh, I'm going to advise you at the end of the session in one of our action items to become a member of a coalition and in order to educate yourself what's going on, but also just to have a community of folks, of like-minded folks that you can share information with. I think in the weeks that we've been spending at home, on Zoom calls, on our computers, we have had to find community in a different way. But it's really been quite extraordinary how that is happening, especially in the music education world. Media outreach and public relations is another way to get a message out. At the local level, media outreach might be advertising your community concert and inviting your local officials to attend. It might be writing a letter to the editor of your newspaper. It might be presenting your students at a school board meeting. Outreach, letting the community know what you're doing is an important part of advocacy. Organizing. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing tonight. We are organizing uh, lots of folks to become effective advocates, and we're going to point you towards specific organizations that have already done the heavy lifting on this that you can be a part of. And finally, lobbying. Lobbying is a direct ask to a decision maker, to a lawmaker, for specific action. You, as private citizens, can lobby your elected officials. That is your right to do that. It is There's a special designation for a lobbyist. A lobbyist must be registered um, and confirmed that they are a lobbyist before going into um, the General Assembly or going into Congress to lobby for a particular agenda item. But you, as individuals, are able to add your voice to lobby for an issue um, on your own behalf. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. What does an effective message look like? And as I mentioned, we very often in the arts arena, we lead with our heart because that's what the arts are all about. It's about experience. It's about knowing. It's about feeling. And those heart stories are so important to get across to a decision maker what impact it has on the students. It's also important to have the data at your fingertips. So let's talk about what that might look like. What does the head message look like? So we're going to talk in a little bit about Arts Ed Tennessee and what we've gathered from folks around Tennessee about what people feel is important. So in doing 5 day-long sessions throughout the state of Tennessee, we were actually collecting data. No, it's not the scary kind of data, but it's the data about how comfortable people feel, about how many of you are willing to step up and advocate, about what your greatest needs are, about where you see the biggest gaps or the strategies that need more help in your school. So data doesn't have to be hard and fast numbers, but it can be anything that you point to that backs up your heart argument. So I have a question from Julie. Why do we seem to have no direct input at the national cabinet level for cultural input or arts advocacy? In Brazil, there's a minister of culture in the president's cabinet. Yes, interesting. Granted, they have other problems, but that is impressive. Would it take a serious arts, cultural friendly president to create such a position in the U.S.? So this idea has come up in numerous administrations, and I don't know why it hasn't taken root. I guess there wasn't the political will to make that happen. I do know that in Congress, in the U.S. Congress, there is a very strong arts coalition of legislators who are arts and cultural legislators who come together around this issue. A consortium of legislators who are friendly to our cause, who vote the right way, who will advocate for federal policy going forward. So I think for now we need to work with those legislators to carry our message forward, and maybe someday we'll have an art czar at the cabinet level. I'm not sure how soon that would happen. So we will get to the take action piece in just a moment, but let's let's see, I'm looking at questions from Alexis. So yes, Alexis, I will answer the question about take action when we get to the take action section, if that's okay. So I want to tell you, before we start taking action, I want to tell you a little bit about Arts Ed Tennessee. If you'll take a moment to read this slide, so I don't have to read it to you. Arts Ed Tennessee is a relatively new organization. It was born just a couple of years ago, and it is a coalition. And the main purpose is to champion supportive policies and essential funding for visual and performing arts education in the state of Tennessee. So the core members, we coalesced, we came together around the professional associations. They were our primary core members as we launched this new organization. So we have the music educators and their regional affiliates, art educators, theater, dance, and a corporate business partner, KHS America, are our core members. So what have we done in the couple of years that we've been operating as a coalition? What have we done? I talked earlier about these co-sponsored workshops that were held across Tennessee, co-sponsored by Americans for the Arts and funded by the CMA Foundation. Last year, we defeated a bill that would have jeopardized students' ability to take 4 years of arts courses in high school. We sponsored a General Assembly resolution affirming the value of arts education, and its adoption is anticipated in the next legislative session, whenever that will happen. And I will say that resolutions are a great way to get your issue in front of a governing body. There is no action that has real teeth to it, so there's no money, there's no finance that is part of a resolution, but it really is great in helping members understand why music and arts education is important. And you can do this at the district level as well. When I was at Metro Nashville Public Schools, the school board passed a similar resolution at the district level as did Metro government in Nashville. We have, over the last couple of years, we've monitored hundreds of education bills. You might not know that there are just hundreds of bills that come across the hopper every legislative season. And together, our lobbyist and our director, Stephen Coleman, director of Arts Ed Tennessee, and our core members have reviewed all of those bills to see what the potential impact is or might be on music and arts education. We've built relationships with key legislators so we can go to them directly with requests or for more information. And we've promoted arts education through a statewide candidate survey. We queried folks that were running for local office as to their attitudes and beliefs around music and arts education. So that's a good way to put people on notice. So who are those elected officials? If you're in Tennessee, here's a good link for you to go to learn who your elected officials are in the General Assembly. And if you want to know kind of more globally who your federal, state, and local officials are, here's a good link for you to identify who your officials are. You can also, for both these sites, I think you can either put in your address or your zip code, and it can take you to your elected officials. So let's get into what do we do? How can we take action? Before I start, I have a question from Alexis. Sorry, I'm confusing you, Alexis, with my device over here. Uh, so, how would you recommend teachers take action? Should you include advocacy materials in your program notes, at concerts and performances, as well as when they speak at concert and performances? And the answer is absolutely yes, on all counts. When you do a concert, typically you would have a printed program. If you work with if you're fortunate enough to have a district music or arts coordinator or music or arts supervisor, work with them to create a boilerplate message about about the value of the arts, music and the arts in education. And then when you are on stage introducing your ensemble, absolutely. When you introduce folks, um, talk about why it's important, how you can use their help in advocating for continued support and effective policies, give them an action, and maybe the action is sign up for Arts Ed Tennessee, which is free, or maybe the action is please sign on to our local coalition. We would love to have more parent voices. So, absolutely, make sure that you include a call to action. It doesn't have to be a big one, just something that they can do right away. So, let's talk about what you can do. And the first thing I'd like you to do after you leave this webinar is to join Arts Ed Tennessee. It is free. There's a link to our website. We do have a Facebook page. I hope that you'll join us. When you join, you will get um, a check mark on your join box to see if you want to receive a newsletter. It comes out monthly and it gives you legislative updates and other important happenings. Please also join your professional association. Most of you will probably join the Music Education Association. Others of you might be in other states, so please join your statewide MEA. And there's a website to tnmea.org. Another thing to do, is to connect. We're asking that you find these organizations, connect to them on social media, and amplify their message. Amplify by reposting, by adding your own thoughts, by sending it to colleagues, by keeping the conversation going. So the organizations that are important to connect to, and I'll have these links for you later on in the session, are Arts at Tennessee, the National Association for Music Education, Tennessee Music Education Association, the NAM Foundation. The NAM Foundation is the National Association for Music Merchants, and they are a global trade association. They have been at the forefront of advocating for music education, and we have them and NAFME to thank for the language in ESSA that calls out music and the arts. They've worked very, very hard on that. We also encourage you to follow Americans for the Arts, another really strong advocacy association for all the arts, dance, music, theater, visual arts, and media arts. And the Arts Education Partnership is not an advocacy association. They are more of a think tank. They are a wonderful go-to resource place to find out what policies in your state affect music and arts education. They also have a wonderful research section where if you're looking for data for research articles that you can cite in your advocacy ask. You can search their library of research pieces by subject area, by grade level, by specific content area. So they are a terrific resource for you as well. So also let's cultivate relationships with your state elected officials. Let's talk for a minute about how you might do that as practice. We don't have anything, an ask before the Tennessee State Legislature right now. They are not in session right now, as you know. So here's a practice letter that you can write and you can send to your legislators, your local General Assembly decision makers. Thank them for their service to your community, to your state. It's not an easy job, as you might imagine. Tell them why music education is essential to a well-rounded education. Give them an example of how it's benefited your students. Let them know that you are happy to be a resource for them. If they have any questions about what's going on in your community, be that go-to person. And then thank them again. So that's a very brief 2 or 3 paragraphs, half-page letter that you can write to your Tennessee lawmakers and let them know who you are. Just introduce yourself. So back to some questions before we go on. From Lizzie Emmons, we see advocacy is about convincing elected officials that the arts are worth funding, but it seems like people running for office rarely talk about the arts during their campaigns, even the progressive candidates. How do we push our agenda forward and get people who are running for office to talk about their support before we vote for them? I will say that Americans for the Arts has done these amazing town halls where they've invited candidates. They have candidate forums, and that's one way that we can get our candidates to speak publicly about music and the arts. So if you follow Americans for the Arts at election time, and we're talking about the U.S. Congress here, and you look for those candidate forums, they spend a long time taking questions and getting questions teed up for candidates so they can voice their support. Americans for the Arts also does a report card on if candidates are arts friendly. So you can, I'm sorry, I can look and maybe post session, I can find you the link to those report cards, but you can look up all of the U.S. Congress and Senate folks and see how arts friendly they are, what they've voted for, what they have not voted for, and you can base your vote off of how arts friendly they are. Of course, there are a lot of factors that go into selecting a candidate, but this can be one. Another question I have from J.J. Norman is, how do you anticipate arts and music education advocacy changing post-COVID? What areas should we be keeping an eye out for as a field? JJ, I'm going to come back to that if that's all right. I would like to address some of that in my final thoughts, but it's a wonderful question. So finally, in the Take Action section, please encourage others to join you. Create a community of advocates where you live. Meet them regularly to encourage and strategize and listen to each other and celebrate small accomplishments. Getting your ensemble to play at the school board meeting is an accomplishment. So celebrate that. And of course, whenever we're able to get together again in person, offer refreshments. Anytime there's food offered, you know that people will come. Maybe we'll get back to that, hopefully, at some time. So let's talk about the resources. You can capture these with a screenshot, but this PowerPoint will be available to you. So all of these URLs will be available. So we talked about the NAM Foundation, NAFME, Americans for the Arts, and I actually have 2 links there for you to go to. There is a state arts education network within Americans for the Arts, so you can look directly at that policy issue. There's the Tennessee Department of Education Arts Education link. I hope all of you know that we have, at long last, a dedicated person for the field, for music and arts education at the Tennessee Department of Education. His name is Todd Shipley. I hope you'll be in touch with him. He is anxious to serve the field. The Arts Education Partnership, here is their website, and that will take you to a whole host of resources and research, which will be useful. And if you're curious, this is my website, Elevate Arts Ed. It's a blog site, and it's all about arts education advocacy. So let's see, checking in, and then we'll go back to some questions that I see. So I want to know if you know, do you know where to go now to learn about policies that impact music and arts education? I hope you have some ideas. Do you have a better understanding of advocacy and the role you play in the advocacy ecosystem? As you can see, it's a complicated ecosystem. Unlike math and language arts, they have a pretty straightforward, yep, here's our textbook, here's what we're going to teach, we know we're going to be tested on this, here we go. The arts have a very complex set of decision makers, advocates, implementers, partners. Our nonprofit partners have been incredibly important throughout the history of my advocacy work. So I hope you'll keep all of that in mind as you think about asking folks to join you. Do you know where to go to find tools that are available to help you be an effective advocate? And hopefully you will commit to becoming an advocate. So let me go back to some questions that I'm seeing here. Can one person really make a difference? I know music teachers often feel very alone and that they are the only music teacher in their building or in their system. Can one voice make a difference? Yes, and yes, I understand that it is isolating. Your voice makes a difference with your vote, with your letters to your elected officials, and in your school. It's important to gather a group of like-minded colleagues together with you. That may include the art teacher. It may include the other content area teachers who understand the importance of the arts. We're going to see more and more work that ties the arts to social and emotional learning. So help your teachers understand that the arts can help you integrate social and emotional learning and integrate other subject areas. Bring them over to your side by offering to help them. So yes, my advice is get a group of colleagues together that you can start bouncing ideas off of. Oh, thank you, Todd. Todd suggests another group to follow, and that is the acronym is SEADAE, SEADAE, or the State Education Agency Directors of Arts Education. And they also have a Facebook page that is in the comments section. So thank you, Todd, for that addition. They also have done some great work about this pivot to how to teach digitally and have a lot of resources there. Lizzie is asking, many of my young friends, professionals, are getting burnt out quickly on advocating for the importance of their own jobs, not just music educators, but music performers and music therapists. Are there groups who are advocating for other areas of music just as strongly as music education right now on a national level to help them? Again, I would say that the NAMM Foundation, Americans for the Arts, CDAY that Todd mentioned, I think those are very effective organizations, and I think are beginning to do more around the area of artist advocacy, and actually music and arts therapy as part of that whole ecosystem. So I would check that out. Melissa writes, I've been told in the past that when advocating in certain cases, your representation and actions speak louder than words. Words certainly help. But with that being said, are there opportunities we can get students involved in? Any opportunities that teachers and students can participate in tandem? Yes, I go back to that performance at the school board meeting. That's a perfect way to get your students involved. Their presence demonstrates the value, and it demonstrates the importance of what you are teaching them. Students can also be involved in your advocacy efforts by becoming a student voice. In California, they have the California Alliance for Arts Education has a wonderful campaign called Student Voices Campaign, and they ask students to submit videos and text and language around why the arts are important to them. You can do that in your school. You can post it on the bulletin boards, or you can post it electronically. You can have a student artist for the week. I think getting your students involved is a wonderful way to keep everyone's eye on what's important and what students are learning. And Alexis is talking about Hill Day, which happened last summer in Tennessee. Typically, every state has a Hill Day for fine arts or visual and performing arts. And very often students are included in those Hill Day visits to perform at the state capitol. That's another way to get involved. Some of you are very aware of NAMM's Best Communities for Music Education, and those designations came out for 2020 in the last couple of weeks. And NAMM and the Best Community designees are doing a wonderful job in highlighting the importance of music education in their districts by tagging that award. I'm a Best Community for Music Education. Here's what my students are doing. Here's why it's important. So that designation has become a badge of honor. Let's see. Any other questions? I want to go back to JJ's questions. So let me, Julie is sharing a short story about teaching in teacher in Murfreesboro. Uh, Wait, okay. She wants me to wait. She can't type as fast as I talk. So, okay, I'll come back to the teacher in Murfreesboro. So, I want to come back to JJ Norman's question. What's going to happen? What's going to happen post COVID-19? So, first, I want to acknowledge that we are in a period of great transformation here. For some of for some of us, we see that as a positive thing. For most of us, we see that as a very scary and frightening and uncertain time. Uh, I want to acknowledge everyone on this webinar for their perseverance, for their curiosity, for their willingness to learn and do something new, for their willingness to reach out to others to help them down this very, very new and untested path. So in preparation for a blog post that I'm writing about what will be different post COVID-19, what I'm hearing from people is that equity issues are going to be front and center. I think we're all realizing that um, the districts that are high poverty districts are having a hard time reaching students individually because they don't have devices, they don't have access to streaming, they don't have internet connections. So I think access and equity are going to become major, major issues going forward. And the more we can do, the more you can do as music educators to reach out to individuals, the better you will be, even if that means calling them just to see how they're doing. The other thing that I'm hearing from folks about post COVID-19 days, what will be different, is that digital instruction is here to stay, not as a be all and end all, but as a wonderful tool to blend in person instruction with digital resources. So I think our field is getting a trial by fire in learning how to do this work. I think it's at the end of the day, I think we will be richer as a field. We will be able to access more resources. We'll be able to tailor our instruction more individually. So I think those are the big things that came to mind when I was querying folks about what they think will be different. The other thing I think that's going to be different is how we feel about what we do and who we are. I think our very sense of self is being, we are examining. We have time now for reflection, to examine, to go deep, and to see who we are, what gives us joy, what's important to us, and what sustains us. And I think what we see by looking at everything that comes across my feed on a daily basis is that music absolutely sustains us. The arts sustain us. It's our go-to in times of celebration, in times of sorrow, in times of confusion. Witnessing all of the musicians who are playing or singing from their balconies, who are recording things from home, I think we could take great hope from that. I hope you will take great hope from that as well. So I'm hoping that you can see this from Julie. Julie has a story from Murfreesboro. I don't know, Julie, do you want me to read this or can everybody see this on, on their screen? So Alexis was uh, teaching in a double wide trailer, and the kids had terrible instruments, bells of clarinets falling on the floor, and just a train wreck. All the middle school bands were invited to perform for the school board, and she wanted her kids to be proud of themselves. But they couldn't make good sounds with their current instruments. So they did something completely out of the box and used the resources they had. She's a percussionist, so she took every instrument she owned to the double wide trailer, and they learned rhythms and global percussion sounds and performed solely on world percussion instruments on TV for the school board. Our kids felt great. It wasn't traditional, but we used what we had and we got attention, not by complaining by what we didn't have, but by being creative. The result was that we had two $25,000 grants, and we started an inner city steel band and world music ensemble in that same double wide trailer called Steel de Boro, which would give global music access to low income students in many schools in the district and still exists today, 20 years later. So, wow, Alexis was one of those students helping back then and working now to continue giving back a lifetime later. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, oh, okay. So a note. It was Julie teaching in the double wide. Alexis was the music ed students. Oh, wow. So talk about paying it forward. That's one incredible story. And I'm so touched by everything that you all are doing. One voice can make a difference. So in closing, I want to again thank everybody for being with me. I hope you will take hope. I hope you will take heart from what we've talked about today. I hope you will contact me if you have any follow-up questions. And if you want to stay on the line a little bit longer, I'm happy to answer any questions we didn't get to. So I'm going to ask you to tune in weeknights, Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. Central Time, to watch Keeping the Beat live. And remember to tell your friends about the program. I think it's extraordinary, really, what they put together. And if I can do it, a non-techie person, then you all can do it too. Presenters who wish to apply to host an episode can send applications to tnmea.org. And thank you so much for watching. Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you again. Good night.